from wherever you are, and welcome to Let's Play Games. I'm John McFarland, Adult Services Librarian for National Public Libraries, and I hope you'll join me in learning or rediscovering some of the more common and uncommon games out there. Last time, we talked about Canasta, one of the most popular card games of the 20th century. We went through a basic game and how to win a single hand, but I want to go into more depths of strategy and how you can win an entire game of Canasta. Let's get stuck in. So, let's review where we were last time. We did one full hand of Canasta, and it can always be a lot at the beginning. But as you get more experience playing the game, this becomes a lot more intuitive. So it's 11 cards for each person. You're playing with your two opponents. Your teammate is across from you. And you need to make your meld a minimum group of 3 worth 50 points. So those 4 through 7s that are only worth 5 are small cards compared to the 8s through kings, which are worth 10 points. So you need to make sure that you're figuring out a way to add up quick. You can either take from the discard pile or the stock. One card is always put up at the beginning, and it's locked until somebody can make melds. So let's kind of look through what we're working with here, because one side's starting out with a bigger advantage than the other. So on player one side, we've got 2 9s, 2 kings, and a joker, so we can at least begin to make an opening meld. And usually, by the way, there's not a lot of communication between player 1 and player 3. You can't just communicate which cards you have, because otherwise your opponents will know. But you've at least got the starting point of something. You've got a wild card, you've got a black 3, which can freeze that discard pile to where no one can take it for 1 full turn. So you're not starting off terribly. Player 2 over here has the beginnings of things, a wild card, 2 black 3s to freeze the deck, but no opening melds, but they're close with the 9s here and the 8s. Player 3 is doing a little better. They've got the initial trip 7s. They've got the 2 wild cards, so that's at least something they can go off of, but nothing they can throw down for a meld just yet. Player 4, on the other hand, is doing pretty well for themselves. They've got 2 jokers, they've got 3 10s, so they're already starting off pretty well. Now here's part of what I didn't want to go super in-depth into last time, which was how you're making your melds. You've got 2 options as player number 4 here. You can either play one of these jokers off the 2 9s, or you can put 2 of the jokers on the 10s. It's entirely up to you. It depends on how long you think the game's going to go. And for Team B, rather than Player B, you can function off of the scorecard that we did last time. So Team B is already in front at 520 to 155. So what we can do is, normally you'd have a bigger notebook for this. So we'll do A and B, and we'll give the starting point of 155, 520. So one important thing to know is that for your opening melds, you have to reach a certain point threshold. After 3,000 points, you need to have 90 points to make a meld, rather than just 50. So it increasingly gets more difficult as you go along. So we're going to start, as we always do, with player 2. They draw Jack. And I think it's a good idea to, if you know that you don't have much going on with your cards yet, to throw away the smaller number cards, especially at early game, because you want to make sure that you have the 10-point cards, the 20-point cards, the 50-point cards in your hand ready to use them at a moment's notice. But the 5-point cards at early game, you don't necessarily need them, especially if later on you may have a meld forming with the lower hands. You can pick them up from the discard later if you're lucky. So player number 3 is going to draw a 4. They are going to, for now, just go ahead and throw that back because there's no reason for it. They can't throw a meld yet. Player 4 is going to draw. This 5 isn't much help, but now it's time to make the decision that I talked about before, because you want to go ahead and put these jokers out and get started. If you think that your opponents have some 10s lying around or it's still in the deck, you can still make the choice of whether it's a natural or a mixed meld. Reminding you from last episode, a mixed meld is only worth 300 points compared to a natural meld, which is worth 500. So it depends on what you think is going to happen. As a team, I think we'll do it where we'll put 1 into each. This now makes for your opening meld. It's looking pretty good here from the get-go. Let's get this all fixed. So this is 10, 20, 70 points here, and 10, 20, 30, 80 points here. So you've got 150 points lying down that you've basically banked at this point. And now you've got to make another discard. You know that a 6 and a 5 has been dropped here. So if you think that maybe you're going to have another meld later, it might be a little different. I'm going to go ahead and drop this 5 for now. Now Team A has a chance to respond. I'm not going to go off the 5. Drawing a 4. Let's scooch this over here. I'm going to keep this little moved around for safety's sake, because I don't want to confuse which meld is where. So we'll go ahead and put the kings on the board here, so that way they can make their opening meld as well. Decision to be made. Let's say we'll throw down this 3, which freezes the deck for a full turn. Now from here, we've played a full turn around. We've gotten some points on the board, and we've started our first go around. Now, let's take a step back for a moment, and let's show a little bit more history to the game, because I didn't talk about Canasta as I would have liked to last time. Let's fix that. So, last time I spent a whole lot of time talking about Rummy, Canasta's ancestor, but I never talked about Canasta itself. It's time I fixed that. So, Canasta was invented in Montevideo, Uruguay in 1939 by 2 gentlemen who didn't import it into the United States until 1949. It stayed primarily as a South American game for about a decade, but it already had a following in Chile, Peru, Brazil, and in 1953 we finally started getting some of the taking off in the United States. But it started off from South America and was imported into New York. And New York, it cultivated for a while, but then it took off. More on that in a second. So now we're back into the game. I went ahead and advanced a little bit to bring up a couple of concepts. One, you can meld 3s if you really want. You can make your own melding of it. Obviously, you wouldn't want to do it this early, but I wanted to show you that it is possible. You can also discard wilds at any point, and they can be picked up as part of a meld. So I went ahead and put down those 7s. Now you don't have any meld minimum points. That was just for the beginning. So there are your 7s. And then they discarded the 2. And this side picked up a 2. Let's see if they can go off of anything. They could throw down the 2 if they really wanted, but they're at least going to put this 6 here. Scooch this down a little. And they are now kind of stuck with what they can discard. They have to put down a high point card. They don't want to put down this king since it can immediately be picked up. And then the jack is probably the most reasonable to put down. So pick up a nice red 3 here, which will function pretty well. Nothing that they can necessarily meld with unless they want to. They have this 10 here, which is kind of a mixed bag, and then the 9s here. So now it's about making your choices as to what you're going to do with the remaining cards you have. So we'll say they throw down the 4's been a pretty safe card to throw down. But keep in mind as you are playing this of what's in this discard pile, because now you've got 2 4s and you do have a wild card. So if you can pick up this discard pile at a certain point, you are going to have to function in remembering a little bit of memory and a little bit of strategy as to what other people have played now that they're on the field. So they're going to draw an 8 here, which is going to be enough to make a nice little new meld. So yes, sometimes your side will get a little on the busier front. So as a 4 player, I simplified it by putting everything on the same side. But what you can do is, let's say that these 7s were being melded, you can keep them on your side. But if you're going to add to that meld, all you have to do until you make a canasta is place it next to so that people know it's a part of that initial meld. So, and no, I regret to inform, you cannot meld off of something already, but that's part of the process. I'm going to go ahead and play a little further on, and I'll show you as things develop what happens next. Another important element here that I'm wanting to note is that we've discarded things that are kind of high value. The biggest reason why we're doing so is right now we're on player 4 that just discarded this jack. We're getting to points where over here, player 2 could now pick up this entire discard pile and use it for their own ends and melds, which in general, they like to, but they don't have anything that they can take off of it. Whereas Team A is trying to avoid playing into their melds. So they're trying to stall as best as they can in order to take something from this discard pile. So the 4, which continues to be of no help. So now you've got the 10, which is already being played, the 9, which is being played, 8, 6, there's this 3, but that's 100 points, so you don't want to throw away that, or the wild card. So now with the wild card, you can't pick it up from this discard pile. So now you're throwing, just because you don't want to give away what's now a very large discard pile. Player 2 is going to take this jack and still not really getting a whole lot of help. They can't add to the pile. So whomever gets this giant discard pile is pretty much going to take the next hand. 8. Now they're really having to think about it. There's aces involved. So now you're kind of in a world of hurt of not wanting to give away things. You can at least play this king, so you got something. But let's say you then decide to, now you're throwing away a queen. On 6 here can at least be added. Can't do anything with the ace. You don't want to throw away this king because the king would be here. So you'll toss the ace. Another 3, which is always good point-wise, but you can't do anything off of it yet. So now you have to again make the choice of, now you're getting rid of all of your wild cards, so it can add up really quickly. It's 4, which is again of no help. For player 3, another queen, which you'll throw immediately back down. Same strategy as before. This 8, which is nice. And now you still are lacking Canasta. So you're kind of stuck in what you can do. And this is why the cardstock can be an element of chance. So you'll put this 2 down because you really don't want to throw away the king. You can add this king in. But now you're really stuck. So sometimes you'll throw away this 3 right here. And now you are in a lovely position where you've now given away 100 points. And you don't want to do that if you can all help it, because the 3 would cover right here. So now Team A has been forced into this unenviable position where now they're going to give away the entirety of what they can do. For Team B, this would be a huge win because now every single last bit of this can be played. So for example, this 10 here, and you can make a canasta out of that because it's already mixed. Let's see. New. You can now, let's see, let me put this all in my hand because there's literally so much at this point that you got to figure out where you can make melds. You can make a meld off of these jacks. There's 7s. There's 4 jacks. Another wild card. So yes, you want to make, let's see, the 7's going to be the discard here probably, but in the meantime, they made melds on 5s, on 4s, on queens, on jacks, on aces, and then really you can just throw wild cards onto wherever, see if you can get, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can have now 2 full canastas and a whole bunch of melds off of a single mistake off of a large discard pile. So these points add up very, very quickly. Let me take a second, tab up these points, and then you can see just how quickly it can steamroll. Okay, so I tabulated everything. It's not looking good for Team A, let me tell you that much. Because when we started, it was 520 for Team B and 155 for Team A. So they had 2 mixed canastas, 300 points each. It's not looking good right there. That's 970 points from all of these mixed together, plus 520. So let's do that math here real quick. That's 1490. So you can score a lot of points very quickly. Minus 10 because of what was left in the hand. So they now have 1,480 points after just 2 hands because of that big discard pile. Hence why strategy of this is so important. Meanwhile, on Team A, they started with 155. They had some points here that got them up to 270. But then they had the red 3s in their hands, which are worth 100 points each. So that's minus 300 right there. And then what was left in their hand, which was another 105 points. So now Team A is sitting at minus 135. So I understand the scores for this game can seem imposing, but because of these 1,000-point hands that can happen quickly, just one bad hand for Team B, and Team A is back in this. And it's a race to 5,000 or even 10,000, depending on how much time you want to play with these. So let's take another step back. It's going to be a lot. I want to show you a couple more things before we close this out. Canasta now taking off in the 1950s. It was easy to learn, it was easy to interact with as a group, so it became a popular game very quickly. You could teach people as young as 5 or 6 who were just learning how to play a card game. All you're having to do is get melds all together. You don't even need to learn sequences like you do in Rummy. So this game took off and was one of the most popular card games to be played in the 1950s and 1960s in the United States. So I wanted to bring you into the middle of one more game, a little bit more of a balanced game compared to other ones that we've seen. Team A has a little bit more to work with here than they have in past. They've got a couple different melds already open. Almost all of them are natural melds, so they're working within, trying to get some 500 points on the board and claw back into this. Team B, meanwhile, has one natural meld that's almost all the way there. The jacks here and these aces here supported by Joker card. So a couple things that I wanted to bring your attention to of the 2s and the 3s and a little bit of the strategy involving that. So for 3s, those freeze the entire discard pile for one turn until somebody else can play one. Try and keep those a little bit more close to the vest if you can. I've been using them for demonstration purposes, but typically you want to hold on to the 3s and the 2s for very specific reasons. 1, 2s are valuable if you lose them as wild cards, and they also can be seen as maybe chasing cards. For if I've got something I really want to hold on to, I want to make sure that those wild cards are used sparingly. The 3s in particular, notice that I held on to those red 3s way too long. Sometimes you can make melds out of them, but it's risky if somebody suddenly goes out like that. You should have, before making that critical discard that was going to lead to the end of the game, put down your red 3s. That would have saved you a 400 point swing from these 2 alone. Wouldn't have saved you there, but it would have been at least a start. And as you're looking throughout the course of the game, and right now it's player 1's turn to draw, seeing more and more what you have left, what's on the board, what has been played, what hasn't been played. A lot of this just inherently comes from practice. Knowing that right now, the 6s, you'll want to add these. And the 8s, you want to add to these. And typically you'll keep these high cards together. And because of this, the 10 is the safest card out of all of them to actually discard. So it's just about learning and situations and keeping everything together. But in general, these are the base rules, and you'll find that each of them is their own separate experience as you go along. So I've talked a whole lot about the 1950s and 1960s. Why haven't I talked about it for the 70s and beyond? Well, Canasta came under competition from so many other card games that reached popularity that it could only have holdover consciousness for so long. Much like the game of whist in the early 20th century, eventually some competitors would come along. Poker and blackjack and casino-style games would make the 50s and 60s Canasta's heyday. But it's starting to change as the game is becoming more popular again, as people have had to stay inside more often. That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed learning about this game just as much as I enjoyed telling you about it, and I hope you get the opportunity to play with some friends and we can help revitalize this game. Be sure to check out some of our previous games on our YouTube playlist, and be sure to check around the channel for other great NPL Universe content. I'll see you next time.